In this video, we're going to solve equations that have fractions in them. Now, you know I like equations, and you know that I like fractions, but I do not like to have fractions in my equations. They slow me down. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a trick that would allow us to get rid of the fractions, solve the equation, and end up with the same answer as if we had kept the fractions? That would be fabulous. Well, here's that trick. As soon as I see an equation with fractions in it, I'm going to put parentheses around both sides of the equation. And then I'm going to remember the number one rule of equations. I can do anything I want to one side so long as I do the same thing to the other side. So I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by a common denominator. What's a common denominator for 2 and 8? Well, 2 divides evenly into 8, so 8 is a good common denominator. We'll multiply both sides of this equation by 8. Now let's use our trick. When I multiply here, how many times does 8 go into 8? Once. 1 times -3 is -3. When I multiply on this side, I'll have to distribute. 8 times the 1/2, 8 times the a. When I multiply 8 times 1/2, how many times does 2 go into 8? 4. 4 times 1, 4. Now when I multiply 8 times a, well, that's just 8 times a, which looks like that. Now if I solve this equation, I'll get exactly the same answer as if I solve this equation. My job? Get a by itself, which means this 4 has to leave. Get rid of a positive 4 with a -4. 4 and -4 is 0 plus 8a. -3 and -4 is -7. Now get a by itself by dividing by 8. Uh-oh, I can't divide -7 by 8. Well, that's all right. That just means that my final answer is -7/8. This problem started with lots of fractions. No reason to believe that it wouldn't end with a fraction for the answer. Now, that was kind of tricky. Let's try the process again on number 2. I have an equation. There are fractions in it. The first thing I do is put both sides of the equation in a set of parentheses so that I can multiply both sides. I must multiply both sides by the same number, and that number should be a common denominator. I need a number that 6 and 9 both divide into. 6 and 9 both divide into 18. All right, let's use our trick. On this side, how many times does 9 go into 18? 2. 2 times -2 is -4. On this side, I'll distribute. 18 times x, 18 times the fraction. 18 times x just looks like this. When I multiply 18 times the fraction, we use our trick. How many times does 6 go into 18? 3. 3 times 5, 15. Now that looks like an equation I can handle. My job? Get x by itself, which means first get rid of the 15. The inverse of subtraction is addition. -15 and +15 is 0 plus 18x. When I combine numbers with different signs, I subtract and take the sign off the larger number. Now get x by itself by dividing by 18. And since you can't divide 11 by 18, we'll say that our final answer is 11/18. See, I think equations with fractions in them are very difficult. So our job to solve is to use our trick to make the equation simpler to work with. What's our trick? If there's an equation with fractions, we put both sides of the equation in parentheses, and then multiply both sides by a common denominator. Well, 2 goes into 10, 5 goes into 10, 10's got to be a good common denominator. By common denominator, I mean I want a number here that all 3 of these divide into evenly. Now we get the next line by using our trick. How many times does 5 go into 10? 2. 2 times x just looks like that. On this side, we'll distribute 10 times 1/2, 10 times 9/10. When I go 10 times 1/2, use the trick. How many times does 2 go into 10? 5 times. 5 times 1, that goes there. When I multiply 10 times 9/10, use the trick. How many times does 10 go into 10? Once. 1 times 9, that goes there. 5 and 9 are like terms because neither one has an x. So I can put those together. I can combine. 5 minus 9 is -4. Now get x by itself by dividing by 2. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. I like -2 for a final answer there. Those are challenging. Let's try one more. It's an equation with fractions, so we'll multiply both sides by a common denominator. A number that 3, 5, and 15 all divide into, well, 3 divides into 15, 5 divides into 15. 15 makes a fine common denominator. Now use our trick. How many times does 15 go into 15? Once. 1 times 4. How many times does 3 go into 15? 5 times. 5 times 2, that's 10. How many times does 5 go into 15? 3 times. 3 times x looks like that. Our job now, get x by itself. If I want x by itself, let's get rid of that 10. Get rid of a positive 10 with a negative 10. Positive 10 and negative 10 is 0 plus -3x. And when I combine numbers with different signs, I subtract and take the sign off the larger number. Now divide by -3. And a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Beautiful. All right, these are challenging. I think you can do it. Go try some homework. I've enjoyed working with you this week.